If you're shopping for a knitter, all you really want is a gift that says, I'm thoughtful, I pay attention, and I'm giving you something you can really use and love. Whether you're a knitter or you're shopping for one, this video is your shortcut. To make it even easier, I put together a document, which I'll link in the description. It's completely free. It just goes into detail about everything I'll talk about in this video. So you can send it to someone, you can share it, you can print it, you can slide it under somebody's pillow. The goal is to make holiday gift giving this year super painless. Here's how the guide is laid out. We're gonna start with some stocking stuffers. Those are like $15 or less. Then we'll get into some mid-tier gifts, more like $25 to $50 range. And then we'll dive into just a few splurgier items that are $50 or more. Let's dive right in. A quick disclaimer before we start with this list. If you are buying for someone who has never knit before, they've told you they wanna get into knitting, but they don't have yarn, they don't have needles, I would recommend getting a kit like one of these. Now you're not getting the top of the line needles, you're not getting top of the line yarn. That's not what a beginner needs. These kits come with everything you need to get started. This is exactly the type of tool that I used when I was learning to knit. I used this Klutz book in particular. This is how you can get into the craft. They'll figure out the rest next. With the exception of those kits, you will not find any yarn on this shopping guide. Yarn is super personal. It comes in a variety of weights, fibers, and colors. Without knowing the preference of the knitter you're buying for or having been given a very specific instruction on what to buy, I wouldn't recommend getting it. If you want to buy yarn for a knitter in your life, I highly recommend getting a gift card. That gives them the opportunity to buy what they need in the quantity they need it, to make sure they have enough in the dye lot that they want. These are some retailers that I like shopping from online. Go with the gift card, not yarn. With that being said, let's dive in with stocking stuffers. And all of these are pretty simple and very functional items. For the most part, they don't need to be fancy to work really well, but a small upgrade can make a big difference in your experience while you're knitting. Stitch markers are one of the most basic tools any knitter needs. Whatever the interest is of your knitter in your life, you can probably type that in to Etsy and find it. So cat stitch markers, Star Wars stitch markers, Highland cow stitch markers, fast food stitch markers, coffee stitch markers, whatever their special interest, I'm sure that you can find something that fits the bill. I'm also partial to functional stitch markers that help you remember what you're doing in your knitting. These ones help you remember if you're decreasing or increasing, and this one helps you remember which row you're on in your knitting. It's a stitch marker that also serves a purpose. A lot of knitting patterns will tell you to continue knitting in pattern for X inches before your next move, and a tape measure helps you to do that accurately. You can get tape measures that are leather, you can get them crocheted with covers, you can get cute animal ones, you can get floral ones. A little bit of a fun, fancy tape measure is a really inexpensive way to add a little bit of extra, something special to the knitting experience. And this rule applies to really any of the little tools that knitters find themselves using every time they pick up their project, whether that be darning needles or cable needles or point protectors. Those little tools and notions that knitters love to have can be upgraded into a slightly fancier package to feel a little bit more luxurious. Another tool that every knitter has in their arsenal is wool wash. The most common brands are Eucalan and Soak, but for an extra special treat, I kind of like a handmade wool wash bar. I find that it's just a little bit surprising, a little something extra, and as a bonus, it's travel friendly because it's not a liquid, it won't spill in your bag. If you'd like a scented one, it can make your whole package or your whole stocking really fragrant. Something that I've added to my knitting arsenal in the last few years is a neck light. This hangs around your neck and it provides targeted lights onto your knitting so that while you're knitting in the evening, watching a TV show, you can see what you're doing while the room stays dark. It might be the type of thing you don't think you need, but when you try it, it's a game changer. They tend to be less than $10, and I think that they are super functional and effective. If you're looking for something that looks pretty fancy but doesn't break the bank, I think an upgraded gauge measurement tool really fits the bill. You can get a pretty basic one, but you can also get some fancier ones made out of wood with custom engravings and wood burnings and decorations. They're not that expensive, but they look really fancy. Another in that category is custom made by tags. So you can get like leather tags made for knitters to sew into their garments or onto their hats. It says made by, you can have their name put on there. They're actually not that expensive and they make the knits look really fancy. Kind of sends a message, I think your knitting looks professional and you deserve tags to make it so. It's kind of a compliment in a gift. The one tool every knitter could always use is a sharp pair of scissors, and a small scissor is really especially helpful because it helps you get into tight spaces and make tiny precise cuts that we sometimes need to make in our knitting. You can get all different designs, you can get different types of sheaths, useful and beautiful. Final item on our stocking stuffer list, and maybe my favorite item on the list, knitting tools that double as jewelry. So you might have a bangle bracelet with stitch markers dangling off of it, or earrings with stitch markers, or like a leather bracelet that also doubles as a ruler, a pendant that's also a yarn snip that happens to be TSA approved. These are items that you can wear as jewelry, even on days that you can't wear a knitted sweater. Other knitters will know, like, oh, you're a knitter, that's so cool. They're also really functional because if you ever need a stitch marker and you're on the go, you happen to have it right on your bracelet and you can grab it when you need it. Let's level up to the next price tier on our list. And all of these items are suitable for any level of knitting knitter, whether they like knitting socks or sweaters or shawls or hats. We'll dive right in with project bags. And I have a slight caveat about project bags. I tend to personally feel that any bag can be a knitting project bag. All you have to do is put your knitting project in it. However, if you're looking to put that extra thoughtful touch in, there are a few brands that make knitting specific project bags. They're branded as such, and that way when you give that gift, it's really saying, like, I went out of my way to get a knitting bag for you. Any knitter who has tried knitting on a bus or a subway and watched their ball of yarn roll down the center aisle and had to chase down after it, you know that there's definitely a function to having something that's going to hold your yarn in place for you. I happen to really like the ones that hang off your wrist, because if you are waiting in line or hanging out at a brewery or going to a concert, you have your yarn contained and right there on your wrist. They come in a bunch of different designs. There are a couple different brands of small makers are making them out of wood. You can take a look at the different designs and options there are and pick the one that suits your needs. There's also a wide range of prices. You can definitely get these on the cheaper end if you want to. It's a fun gift that can serve as a stocking stuffer or a more splurgy gift, depending on the one that you choose. Yarn bowls are another classic knitting gift. They can be made out of ceramic, out of wool, out of resin. They have lots of different materials. You can get them 3D printed. The whole point of a yarn bowl is that you put it on the table, you stick your yarn ball in it. They have a notch that holds your yarn in place, and in some cases they have a hole that you thread your yarn through, so that as you're knitting from your yarn, the ball can roll freely and it won't wind up on the floor. You can get something that looks really classic, or you can get something that looks really modern and funky. The nice thing about a yarn bowl is even when it's not in use, it serves as a beautiful display piece and a conversation starter to talk about your craft and why this functional item is in your home. Of all the items on this list, I think this might be the most restrictive, and that is sock blockers. So you're going to want to only buy this if you know the knitter that you are buying for likes to knit socks. Now, there are kind of two categories when it comes to sock blockers. There are some wire ones that are kind of just a minimalist outline, and then there are more intricate wood ones. I like to have both in my toolkit, because when I'm blocking a wet sock, the minimalist metal outline sock blockers tend to do the trick really well. I have a lot of airflow and I'm not worried about them getting moldy or yucky. Those intricately carved wood sock blockers are what I like to use to photograph socks for Ravelry or for Instagram. You could even go ahead and get them engraved with the name or the Ravelry handle of the recipient. Now, I haven't ever met a knitter who doesn't appreciate a warm and cozy drink. I love that these can be used and enjoyed over the course of many years, over the course of many knitting projects. Pair one of these mugs with a lovely box of hot chocolate or some really nice tea. I think it's a thoughtful gift that says, I know you love knitting, without actually having to buy a knitting tool, especially for like a more picky recipient who you're not sure what they want. Now, along those same lines, if you want to get something knitting themed, but you're a little bit nervous to get a knitting tool, I would recommend checking out some prints or artwork. There's some really beautiful art that celebrates knitting. Also a great conversation starter when people come over and they ask about it, gives you an opportunity to talk more about knitting. Another great gift for knitters that isn't necessarily a tool is a book. And there are so many different types of knitting books. I actually have a video talking all about knitting history books and fibercraft history books that help you understand your craft on a deeper level. So if you have a history buff knitter in your life, that might be a great place to start. You can also get reference books, stitch dictionaries, pattern books. If they love Star Wars or Disney, you can find that book. Any general reference knitting book is probably going to live on their bookshelf and be enjoyed and celebrated for years to come. The final item on this mid-tier price point list is knitting merch. And for those outside of the knitting world, it may be hard to understand, but knitting is a communal craft. And for many of us who may not be able to have physical community in our local area in knitting, we can find knitting community online. And there are certain influencers online who have created their own merch to celebrate the craft. I'm thinking of this knit hat from Deegan. I saw this everywhere at Rhinebeck. I have tote bags from crafters who I follow, hats and t-shirts from knitting brands, because they make me feel looped into and connected to my craft, even when I can't actively be crafting or wearing something I've made. It's a way for us to identify our tribe. And by the way, I'm excited to tell you that I've been working with this amazing graphic designer to come up with some merch of my own. My goal was kind of just to make the shirts and hats and stuff that I was dreaming existed. All of that should be available on my YouTube page. You can take a look at all the stuff we've been working on. I'm really excited about it. I think it came out really cool. Final section on our list, and it isn't a very long section because we're not trying to break the bank here, okay? But these are the splurgier items, the $50 plus category. These are for the people in your life who you really love. And actually, for what it's worth, if you want to treat yourself, I think these are amazing gifts for treating yourself to something a little special this holiday season. Now, the first item on this list is going to be the most obvious one, which is interchangeable needle sets. And frankly, if you are buying a gift for a knitter, I would argue don't buy them an interchangeable needle set. It is a very personal decision. And unless you are the type of person who surprises someone with a car, they're going to want to test drive and do their research before they make that big of a commitment. Unless you know from the knitter in your life exactly which interchangeable needle set they want. And I'm talking tip length, I'm talking style, I'm talking exact brand name. Unless you know all of that information, I would not buy an interchangeable needle set. Instead, I would just get them a gift card. If you want to buy an interchangeable needle set, definitely don't make it a surprise. Talk to the knitter first. With that being said, that is going to be the only obvious knitting related item on the splurge part of the list. Everything else is more knitting tangential. If you're really splurging on an expensive gift and you're a knitter, you're probably going to want to pick that item out yourself. So I wouldn't recommend surprising a knitter with anything crazy expensive in the needle and yarn category. Instead, think about one of these items, like an ember mug. Last year for the holidays, my husband got me an ember mug. And frankly, before I owned one, I truly thought it was extra. Why do I need a mug that's going to keep my drink warm? It feels just a little bit excessive. But I have been using this thing every single day, and when I tell you, it is a game changer. If you have ever made yourself a cup of coffee or tea and then sat down with your knitting only to look up and it's been 40 minutes and your tea is cold, this mug will solve all your problems. I think that the problem with their marketing is that they say it's a mug that keeps your drink warm, but that's not quite true. It's a mug that keeps your drink at the perfect temperature. It ensures that when you sit down to knit, you will always have a cozy, warm beverage at the perfect temperature right by your side. This mug is definitely splurgy, but I have found it to be so durable, so reliable, elevates my coffee experience to turn it from something that's just like drinking my coffee into really like a self-care moment. Another slightly splurgy item that has really elevated my everyday experience and kind of my knitting experience to a luxurious plane is a heated throw blanket. Sitting down to a warm and toasty couch with your nice drink and your knitting at the end of a chilly day is an unparalleled luxurious experience. I highly recommend. The unsung hero of my knitting experience is this specific portable charger from Anchor. And part of the reason why I love it so much is because I keep all of my knitting patterns on my phone. The problem with that is I always forget to charge my phone. And so if I'm sitting on the couch, there's not an outlet nearby, or I'm going out to meet my friends for coffee and knitting and I haven't charged my phone, I risk not having my pattern available because my phone is going to die. And yes, there are lots of different power bank options, but if I forgot to charge my phone, I definitely forgot to charge a power bank. The thing about this specific one is that it has plugs and it plugs into the wall. I just use this as my charging brick all the time. It's always plugged into the wall, which means it's always charged, and then I can pull it and grab and go. If I ever need to charge my phone, whether that's knitting on the couch or running out to knit with friends, I have that handy and ready to go. I never lose my pattern. All right, the final thing on this list is kind of a wild card. The robot vacuum that you've probably been able to see in the background of all of these videos, it was definitely a splurge. It's hard enough to find time in the day for my knitting, and especially now that I have a toddler running around, and there is nothing better than sitting down on the couch with my knitting and hitting a button on my phone and watching a machine clean my rug and mop my kitchen for me while I relax with my craft. I get it that this may be like out of left field, and be careful because not everybody wants to receive a cleaning tool for the holidays. I am truly in love with it. It really does feel like a very luxurious experience to be able to sit down and watch a robot vacuum my rug for me while I am doing my craft. It's really nice. You definitely have to know your gift recipient for that one, but I figured I'd include it because it's genuinely changed my life. It's so cool. It goes on sale all the time, and then you can get a really good deal on it. I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it. That's it. The ultimate gift guide for knitters. I think that there's something for any knitter on this list at pretty much any price point. And all of the items on this list are super functional, so you're definitely going to be giving something that's going to be appreciated and well loved. And if you're a knitter who's watching this video and you didn't see your dream gift pop up on the list, make sure to comment it down below. I'll go ahead and update the document in the description with as many gift ideas as I can, so that if I missed your favorite in the video, at least it'll be in that Google Doc. Whether you're sending this list to someone to shop for you or whether you're treating yourself, I hope that you feel really loved and special this holiday season. As always, it's been really nice talking about knitting with you today, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye.